Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether it's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe watch it on Twitter or X, the Everything app, _ Jonathan Smith there at Ticket 1430 if you want to follow the station, or maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And if that's not enough for you, you can also check out my other YouTube stuff over at My Take Is. Florida beats Houston last night to become your national champions of the college basketball world. What a game. What a game. Houston up by 12 in the second half. Florida comes storming back. They win the game 65-63, just an ugly game. Hopefully you took the under, like the Sack Man told you yesterday to do on the Dan Dockett show. Oh, man. So I just want to start at the beginning of this game. The first 5 minutes, really the first 10 minutes of the game, felt so much like a Houston basketball game. Houston comes out, first 5 minutes, they grab 5 offensive rebounds. And they're, trying to get second chance points off of them. They didn't get any, but I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, like if Houston's going to grab this many offensive rebounds, like they're pacing to grab like over 20, then they're just going to wear Florida out and they're probably going to win. But Florida was the first team that I noticed did this against Houston. Florida would run a big man right down the middle of the floor to counter all the Houston bigs going to the offensive glass. And Florida's offense was awful to start. We're going to get to more of that here in a second. But those big man layups, they got 2. Codon got fouled on one of them, and he hit 2 free throws. Like, they got 6 easy points early by just running a big man right down the middle of the floor. And it was huge because, once again, Florida's offense in that first half was absolutely brutal because Houston did an excellent job of defending Walter Clayton Jr. in that first half. Clayton would give the ball up. He would never get it back. All 4 of his shots in the first half were like 30 feet away from the bucket, like tough, pull-up, contested threes. They did an excellent job of making him uncomfortable. He was clearly frustrated. All of his shots felt like I have to shoot at some point, so let's just pull up from 30 feet. Florida, in fact, didn't make a 3 in the first 10 minutes. Neither did Houston. Okay? But Houston, in those first 10 minutes, had taken 21 shots to Florida's 12. Part of that was the offensive rebounds early. The other part of that was the number of turnovers that Houston forced. It felt like Houston was going to, kind of impose their will physically, force turnovers, and rebound their way to a win. And the physicality and just the aggressive defense that Houston played really bothered Florida early. Not only did it bother Walter Clayton Jr., who didn't score until the second half. Codone, the big white guy for Florida, he traveled 3 times because he would set screens and he'd roll and then he'd catch the ball, and there would just be like a 6'3" guy underneath him, and he would shuffle his feet. The speed and the aggressiveness of the Houston defense really got to Florida in that first half, and it's why they only scored 28 points in the first half. And Florida has to thank their lucky stars for Will Richard. If I was to lay out the 3 reasons why Florida was able to win that game last night, Will Richard has to be on the list. At the end of the first half, he had 14 points. 14 points. That was half of the number of points that Florida scored in that first half. He had 14 of their 28 points. He was the only Florida player who made a 3 in the first half. He hit 4 of them. If it's not for Will Richard getting hot and really shouldering the load offensively in the first half, Florida probably doesn't win that game. He had 14. Cadone had 6. No one else for Florida had more than 2 points at the end of the first half. And, of course, Walter Clayton Jr. had 0. So Will Richard getting hot there in the first half, which is kind of what he does, played a huge role in Florida winning. Also, their defense, they defended very well in that first half. Held Houston to 31 points. Houston was only 2 of 14 from 3. Okay, Florida did have 9 turnovers, though. That was part of the issue as well. Houston only had 2, but major thing here, Houston had 0 second chance points in the first half. After that, surge of offensive rebounds in the first 4 minutes of the game, Houston didn't grab another one for the rest of the first half. Okay? They did a great job, Florida did, of closing possessions with rebounds. The other really nice thing about that first half is only 4 fouls were called. I'll probably rant about the refs later. I do want to keep it moving about the game because the game was nothing short of spectacular. And part of it is because of how hot Will Richard got in that first half. He was a large part of why Florida was able to win that game, even though he didn't score very much in the second half. Speaking of the second half, the officials didn't feel involved enough, so they decided to call over 20 fouls in the second half. They called 5 fouls on Florida in the first 2 minutes and 39 seconds. Just brutal. So that's happening. Florida gets a technical on their bench because they had a million guys up on the floor because the floor is elevated and the benches are below it. And I guess you can only have so many guys on it. And so, you got their entire coaching staff is up on it. They get teed up. Okay, Cryer also hits 2 threes in the first 3 minutes. Houston opened the second half on an 11-2 run in the first 4.5 minutes of the second half. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, they're up by 12. Walter Clayton Jr. still hadn't scored. But he would eventually get on the board. Walter Clayton Jr.'s first points came with a little under 15 minutes left to go in the game on 2 free throws. And once again, those refs, just brutal. They called everything in the first 7 minutes of that half. So Walter Clayton Jr. makes 2 free throws. He goes to the bench. And they're down by 12. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, man. Florida's offense has been really bad with Walter Clayton Jr. on the floor. Now he's going to go off the floor. Where is the offense going to come from? This could get really ugly really quickly. Because even though Walter Clayton Jr. wasn't scoring the basketball, I thought he did a good job of finding open teammates, which is how Florida scored a lot of their points. They would put 2 on him. Walter Clayton Jr. would find the open guy, and then they'd move the ball wherever it needed to go. And then, Will Richard would hit a 3, or they would get a layup. So he goes to the bench. I'm just like, oh, geez, what's going to happen here? And when you play Florida, it is not if, but when are they going to hit their, 2 3-pointers on back-to-back possessions? When is that going to happen? And it happened when Walter Clayton Jr. went to the bench. This what could have been very scary and nerve-wracking 2.5-minute stretch turned into a great one for Florida. They take this 12-point lead and they cut it down to 3. Walter Clayton Jr. comes back in the game. And I'm sitting at home and I'm watching. I'm like, they're down by 3. They just cut 9 points down off of Houston's lead with their best player on the bench. He's coming back in. He's only got 2 points. That's not going to last. And what do you know? Walter Clayton Jr.'s first field goal comes at the 7:54 mark. It's an and one. He goes to the line, ties the game at 48. Because you just knew it was coming. Walter Clayton Jr. hit every big shot for Florida in the NCAA tournament. Whenever you hear people talk about Houston, they call the team tough. They're just tough. And that's not really what they mean. They mean that Houston's really physical. That's really what people mean when they say that Houston's tough, because Houston is physical and they are tough. But I think when people talk about it, They really just mean physical because no one calls Florida tough, and they are as tough as they come. They hit every shot that they needed to throughout the entire tournament. Every run that they needed to go on, they did. When they needed it late against UConn, they figured it out. When, they played a bad first half against Maryland, they bounced back because they're tough and they're pretty resilient. Against Texas Tech, their dreams looked done, but they're tough and they were resilient. And, Walter Clayton Jr. just continued to hit big shots. And when Florida needed him, despite not being very efficient, despite, not shooting the ball well, he put his head down, he got to the rim. Part of that, and part of why he was able to do that was Todd Golden did an excellent job. And, they would run that horn set with their two bigs at the elbow, and Walter Clayton Jr. would curl off of it, and he got a couple easy layups, a couple and ones off of that. And that really kind of got him going. That got him in the flow of the game. They took the ball out of his hands and allowed, Martin or someone else to kind of initiate the offense to get him the ball, Walter Clayton Jr., while he was moving. It was really impressive. Todd Golden did, an excellent job coaching his team. So Walter Clayton Jr. hits this and one and ties it. They wind up taking the lead later. Walter Clayton Jr. finally hits a three at the 3:12 mark. And it was just a big shot. Like when that shot went through, it just kind of felt like, all right, like Walter Clayton Jr. is fully back. He's going to continue, to get all these buckets. That shot tied the game. LJ Cryer, who made a lot of tough plays late for Houston, he ends up coming back down and he gets an offensive rebound tip in. And I mean, just an incredible, incredible game. And Houston's lack of offense really showed itself. They didn't score in the final 2 minutes of the game. They went 2 minutes and 5 seconds without scoring. And Florida's offense, not much better. They made 3 free throws in the final 2 minutes. I mean, it was just brutal. Just the lack of offense late in that game, but you could tell both teams were tight and they were pressing. And on Houston, so people are going to talk a lot about Houston's final possession and how they didn't get a shot up. That was obviously a big deal. I thought that their possession prior was worse because they turned the ball over. And their best player, arguably, LJ Cryer, who, had been their best offensive player that night, didn't touch the ball. Sharp ends up turning the ball over. He dribbles it off his foot, kicks it out of bounds. Florida comes back down. They go hard to the rim. They call a foul on Houston because, of course, they did. Will Richard hits 2 free throws. Once again, like that dude was huge for Florida in that game. And then, Houston comes back down and they have that horrific possession where they don't even get a shot off because, to Florida's credit, they played really good defense. They got out there. They were going to contest that sharp three. But, they're a ball fake, one dribble away from a wide open 3-point attempt to potentially win the national championship game. So all the credit in the world has to go to Florida. Their resiliency was on full display in that game. And it was just a very impressive thing from them. Will Richard getting hot in the first half. Walter Clayton Jr. getting going in the second half. He scored 11 points in the second half. Played really well. But the reason why they won the game, and I said this yesterday, Florida and whether or not they won the game was going to depend on how well they rebound the ball. And they didn't rebound the ball great. They out-rebound Houston 40-39, but they allowed Houston to grab 15 offensive rebounds. That's a lot of offensive rebounds. Houston had 18 of them against Duke. The difference, though, between the Duke game and the Florida game for Houston had 19 second chance points against Duke. They had less than 10 second chance points against Houston. the ability of the Florida Bigs to give up the offensive rebound, but stay in the play and get another contest, get a miss, or I think there were three different times where Houston grabbed an offensive rebound and a Florida Big or a Florida guard would get in there and tie up the Houston player and rip the ball away. That happened late. It was big, and it ended up, the ball ended up bouncing off of a Houston player. It went the other way, and so like the number of times that happened was huge. So when you look at the Houston offense, they generate points in two different ways. Second chance points, rebound, go back up, layup, or rebound, kick it out, and then Cryer or Uzan or whoever hits a three. Like that's usually what happens. It happened several times against Duke. Florida didn't allow that to happen last night. There was no offensive rebound kick, which led to a kick out for three. There was one. I think there were two tip ins. Cryer had one late, and then the Houston dude that's like 6'8" with like a 7'8" wingspan. That's not really his wingspan. That's just what it feels like. He had the tip slam. That was really it. Like those were the only second chance points that I can really remember. And so one of the two major aspects of Houston's offense was completely cut off by Florida by the way that they rebounded. And when they did give up an offensive rebound, they stayed in the play and they were able to force a second miss and then grab a rebound. The other thing that Florida did really well is they defended the three. Houston was one of the 5 best 3-point shooting teams in the country from a percentage perspective. Houston was 6 of 25 from three last night. That's their offense. Look, Cryer, excellent player. Uzan, excellent player. But they didn't light it up the way that they're capable of. Sharp was 1 of 7 from three at one point. I don't know what he finished at, but he didn't make more than one. I do know that. And so just all the credit in the world has to go to Florida for the way that they rebounded and just the way that they defended. They defended so well, and that's what you have to do against Houston. Like you have to match their intensity and their physicality. You have to match their effort on the glass. Florida did that. So they played great. They are a worthy champion. I still really wish that they had played Duke because I thought that Duke and Florida had been, the two best teams all year. But either way, we got an excellent game last night. Just to cap off what was an excellent college basketball season. Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, he's going to join me. He's going to join me on the show coming up here at 11, and it's going to be great. It is, because Zach always does a really good job whenever he comes on. And we're probably also going to touch on the future of college basketball because I have some thoughts on it. The ratings for the Final Four came out. It was, like the most highly rated Final Four ever. Who would have thought when good teams get in the Final Four, more people watch? What a coincidence. But there is something holding back college basketball from entering this golden age. Aaron Torres, who's, a friend of not just this show, but the Dan Dockett show as well. I saw him tweet out that we're about to enter the golden age of college hoops. I'm not picking on Aaron. I've seen a lot of other people say this. But there's one very specific thing that is holding college basketball back from being great. And I'm going to tell you what that is when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith. If you want to follow me there, you can also follow the station at Ticket 1430 for updates on not only my show, but also the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3. And you can listen to both mine and Dan's show on that Indy Sports Ticket app, wherever you download your apps. And if you want even more from me, I got a nice little YouTube channel called My Take Is. It's solid. You should go check that out as well. Now, I've seen a lot of takes on the future of college basketball and why we're in the golden age and how things have never been better because ratings are up. They've changed the way that they do ratings. I don't know if people know this or not, but they used to not count airport and like bar TVs. They do that now. That's why ratings for everything are up. And I've seen people comment because the ratings for the Final Four came out and they were really high, like normal, but these were like the highest ever. I think 15 million people, I believe that was the number, watched both games, which is that's awesome. It's incredible. There's never been a better time to pay 18 and 19-year-olds than right now to play college basketball. And there are certain aspects of college basketball that make me believe that we are moving into a great time for the sport. I mean, did you watch the games? The games are awesome. And the future of college basketball from a talent standpoint probably hasn't been better. There are so many great players in the world of college basketball. And with the transfer portal, your best mid-major players like Donovan Dent from New Mexico, they can transfer up. Donovan Dent going from, New Mexico to Xavier, going from playing in the Mountain West, which is, a good conference, to playing in the Big East, which is one of the power conferences of college basketball. And so with your better mid-major players transferring up, your top games, your better teams, your power conference teams are going to be better. But you also have the inverse happening, where you have these really talented, power conference players that maybe aren't playing as much as they think that they should. They're still very talented, but for some reason they aren't playing. They're now able to transfer down, where they're able to play a little bit more and develop into really good basketball players, and then either stay at some mid-major or transfer back up to somewhere, at the power conference level. Okay, so that's leading to the best players on your power conference teams and your mid-major teams having more talent. Okay, so despite the sport being as talented as it's ever been, it's still solely going to be a March event. That is what men's college basketball is right now. No one pays attention in November when the season starts. I'm not talking about Indiana fans or Purdue fans because, this is Indiana. We love basketball here. I'm talking from, a nationwide standpoint. November, December, January, February. People don't care. They don't. That's just the reality that we're in with college basketball. And maybe saying people don't care is a little too harsh, but the interest in college basketball before March isn't going to increase for a few reasons. First, college basketball season happens during football season. Like that's when it starts. College football is still very much going on. The NFL is in full swing. I know that Feast Week is always a big deal in the college basketball world, but let's be honest. On Thanksgiving Thursday, are you watching the Thanksgiving games and Thursday night football, or are you watching a college basketball game that in the grand scheme of things really isn't going to matter all that much? Most people, maybe not you, but most people, when you look at the ratings, are watching the NFL over that. They're watching the Monday night football game over whoever's playing in Maui. That's the reality of it. So that is one of the issues. The one that college basketball can't overcome, though, with the way that it is structured right now is the player movement is problematic. It is. I think the NBA struggles with this as well because I believe that the sports that do the best are the ones where people are invested in teams, not players. Like college football does well because people are very invested in their team. The NFL does well because people are very invested in their team. You go overseas and you look at soccer. Those people aren't like Messi or Ronaldo fans. They are, from Real Madrid, so they are Real Madrid fans. Okay, and when you look at college basketball, like that's how people want to be, and that's how people are. The issue is it's harder to be invested in your team when the roster changes every single year. You got, 8 guys out, 8 new guys in. This is the one thing that the WNBA and women's college basketball have figured out. Their best players, they don't bounce around very much. Part of why people loved Caitlin Clark when she was at Iowa, and part of why people followed her as intensely as they did, is because they knew exactly where she was going to be. They knew she was going to be at Iowa, and they knew she wasn't going to leave. The women's college basketball fans this year, they knew Juju Watkins and Paige Buchers were never leaving USC or UConn. It wasn't going to happen. And when you have players that stick around for 3 or 4 years, it builds camaraderie with the fan base. And when I think about men's college basketball, there's a very small number of college basketball teams on the men's side that don't have that problem. Purdue's the only team that I can think of that doesn't seem to have a high number of transfers year in and year out. But the constant rotation of players is going to lessen the attraction to the sport. March is still going to be awesome. March is going to be better because the best players are playing on the best teams. Okay, and people enjoy watching a great product. I know that, Cinderellas are cool, but when we look at the ratings of everything, it's whenever there's like a clear best team. Like the ratings this year, no coincidence that they were the highest ever when you have the 4-1 seeds all in the Final Four. The best rating years of the NBA were when the Golden State Warriors were awesome. The best rating years of the NFL were when the Patriots with Tom Brady were awesome. People enjoy watching great more than they enjoy watching 15th seeded Princeton make a run to the Sweet 16 where they get beat by 20. That's just the reality of it. So March is going to continue to be great. I'm talking about all of the other months. The constant rotation of players lessens the attraction to the sport because like you have, 3 kids and a wife and soccer practice on Tuesday and a ballet recital on Saturday. You don't have time to sit down and be like, who are these 8 new players that are playing for Indiana or Purdue this year? Like, you don't have the time for it. And these former mid-major players are going to continue to pop up out of nowhere, which is a good thing. Like the Walter Clayton story, the Walter Clayton Jr. story was great this year. I know that he played at Florida last year, but he's been a great story. But he wasn't great last year. He was a good player, not great. People didn't know who he was this year until like January at the earliest. And part of why Caitlin Clark and Iowa were interesting from the jump when she was there is everyone knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. If Zion Williamson had gone back to Duke, the ratings for college basketball that season would have been sky high for Duke games because everyone knew who Zion Williamson was and what he was capable of. If Cooper Flagg was to go back and play for Duke next year, which is not going to happen, then the ratings for college basketball would go up significantly because people know who Cooper Flagg is and people want to watch that dude play. And everyone knows exactly where he's going to be. That's the reality of it. And college basketball will not reach its quote-unquote golden age until they can get these high-level freshmen, like legit NBA prospects, to stay at the same school for 2 years at a minimum. Once that happens, or if it ever happens, because I don't think that it will, the interest in the sport will skyrocket because familiarity is important. Part of why Caitlin Clark has the following that she does is because people became very familiar with her junior year at Iowa, and then everyone watched her senior year at Iowa. Familiarity, it is important, and that's why people have followed her to the WNBA. That's just the very simple reality of it. And when you look at men's college basketball, it takes us 2 months to figure out who's good and who isn't, because some of these high-level recruits that are freshmen that are projected to be, top 5 picks in the NBA draft, you don't know who they are because you're not spending your time figuring out who the top high school recruits in the country are. Like, you're just not, and that's fine. You shouldn't spend your time doing that. There are much better things to do than that. And so because it takes people 2 months to figure out who's good and who's not, it leads to lesser interest in men's college basketball during the regular season. Okay. Also, preseason polls and way too early top 25s have never been dumber because every major roster is going to have like 8 guys leave. That's just the reality of it. But there's still this lack of familiarity within the sport that is holding it back from reaching its pinnacle. The only thing that fans are really familiar with in men's college basketball are the coaches, logos, and jerseys. And the jerseys change all the time. Do you remember those monstrosities that Indiana wore earlier this year? Ugh. No one is familiar with the players. Okay, the golden age of basketball will come when the fans are able to be more familiar with the players. And that involves, guys staying at their schools longer. And that involves these high-level freshmen like Cooper Flagg or VJ Edgecombe at Baylor or Knipple at Duke. We can keep going. It also involves them staying for 2 years. Once those things happen, we will then be in the golden age of college basketball. Now, college basketball is fun. College basketball is entertaining. But I personally prefer the NBA. And I say that, people are like, whoa, how? Why? Why? And my answer is that final possession from Houston last night where a guy goes to take a three-pointer and he drops the ball and he can't pick it up and everyone's just standing around like what in the world do we do? Yeah, that doesn't happen in NBA games. The level of play is just higher. And the Pacers are playing as well as anyone else in the NBA right now. They are rolling. They're playing the Wizards tonight. I've got thoughts on that game. And I also want to start getting you ready for the NBA playoffs. So we're going to take a short break from college basketball. Zach Pereles is joining the show at 11, and we'll pick up that national championship conversation. It's going to be really good, so make sure you're tuned in then. But when we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to give you my pitch as to why you should watch the Pacers play the Wizards, and I'm going to start getting you ready for the NBA playoffs, which are about a week and a half away.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show welcomes you back here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith, or maybe you're listening via that awesome Indy Sports Ticket app that you can download wherever you find your apps. You can not only listen to me there, but you can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3, which you can hear me chirp in on as well. I'm sure he'll have plenty of thoughts on Houston losing to Florida last night. If you want even more from me, you can go check out my other YouTube channel. My take is we are doing some solid things. It's good over there. Speaking of good, solid things, the Indiana Pacers are going to host the Washington Wizards tonight. And the Wizards are terrible. They've won 17 games. They're tanking. Capture the flag is in full effect for the Washington Wizards, like every other bad team in the NBA. But me being the hoops head that I am, I love basketball too much. I had to distribute some buckets yesterday at my local LA Fitness because I just had the itch, you know. Me being the hoops head that I am, I'm 1,000% going to sit down and watch this game tonight. I'm actually very excited to do it because I just enjoy watching young NBA players in the process of trying to figure out how to survive in the league, because that's really what playing any professional sport is. The goal is just to survive and be on a roster the following season. And the Wizards have a couple good young players. Alex Sarr was the number 2 overall pick in this last year's NBA draft. Another Frenchman, decent. You know, he can kind of protect the rim. He's shooting the ball better here as of late from 3. It is impressive. No other way around it. Okay, he's gotten better, and I enjoy watching players improve over the course of the season. Bub Carrington is slowly becoming one of my favorite players. I don't know why. He's just very interesting to me. He went for 32 the other night, by the way. So the Wizards have multiple good, young, fun players that you should 1,000% tune in and watch. But it'll also be fun to watch the Indiana Pacers. I would actually recommend for every fan base in the NBA to go watch their favorite team in person play against the Wizards. Say, well, Jonathan, why? Because watching your favorite team play against the Wizards allows you to see exactly what the front office and coaching staff want for this team to look like, because the Wizards are bad. They are so bad. And so, we got the absolute best version of the Pacers when they played the Wizards earlier in the year, because they put up 163 points. So if you want to go see the absolute best, picture-perfect version of the Indiana Pacers, go watch them play against the Wizards tonight. Okay? Because it's coming one way or the other. Let's say the Wizards have the game of their lives, and they're up by 7 going into the fourth quarter. Then the Wizards will pull their best players so the Pacers can win, and they can continue tanking for Cooper Flag. The other fun thing about watching the Wizards is it is a great reminder of how much talent and how many really good basketball players there are in the NBA. The Wizards don't have scrubs. These dudes can Jordan Poole is not a scrub. That guy can play. Chris Middleton, good player. Brogdon, I know we don't like him here. Good player. So, if you want to be reminded of the depth of the NBA and you want to see some young players process and figure it out, watch the Pacers play the Wizards. You can also watch the Pacers look exactly how they're supposed to look in this game, because once again, the Wizards are bad. So, let's focus on the opposite of bad. The NBA playoffs are a week and a half away. So I've highlighted who I think are the 10 best teams in the NBA. Maybe. I don't feel great about this list because there are a lot of really good teams that are going to make the playoffs. There are going to be good teams that don't make the playoffs out west because they're just loaded. I mean, there's so many good teams out there. So the 10 best teams in the NBA, according to Jonathan, I have them tiered off as well. We're going to start at the top. These are the best teams. These are the teams that can absolutely win an NBA title. You're probably familiar with them. The Oklahoma City Thunder. They've been the best defensive team in the NBA all year. From a net rating standpoint, they are the second best team ever, behind only the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. That's right, this Thunder team, their net rating is better than the Kevin Durant Warriors or the 73-9 Warriors. That is how good Oklahoma City is. It's just wave after wave of great defenders that can shoot the ball. They're loaded. They're the best team in the NBA. The question about them, though, is can Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams do enough offensively? That was the issue last year in the playoffs. Can those guys, with another year under their belts, be a little bit better? Second best team in the NBA is the Boston Celtics. I know they're going to be the 2 seed, and I know Cleveland has had a great year. They're not better than Boston. Jason Tatum is having the best year of his career, and they don't really have a weakness. Now, they do have a couple problems. Jaylen Brown hasn't been as good this year as he was last year. Can he pick it back up a little bit? And last year, they didn't need Kristaps Porzingis to win the whole thing. They do this year, and that guy does not stay healthy. Can he stay healthy? If he does, Boston's going to have an excellent chance to be the first team to repeat since the Lakers in the 2009 to 2010 season. Third best team in the league is Cleveland, the Cavs. They're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They've won a boatload of games, and they're the best offensive team in the NBA. The question for them, though, is do they have enough elite talent? Can you win a championship with Donovan Mitchell or Evan Mobley or Darius Garland as your best player? We're going to find out because they definitely are going to have a great opportunity to do that. And then this next tier are what I'm going to call fringe championship teams. Teams that I don't expect to win the whole thing, but if they did, I wouldn't be surprised. The Golden State Warriors, okay, Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, more than good enough to be the 2 best players on a title team. Draymond Green is still a very good player. The question for them, though, that's different from previous years is their role players they don't have a ton of experience. And can they do enough? Can Podziemski and Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga and the rest of these guys, can they do their part? Because they've never had to do their part before. So we'll see how they look in the playoffs. Number 5, the Lakers. They have Luka and LeBron. Nothing else needs to be said. The question for them, though, they have a major lack of size. They only have 1 center. So can they protect the rim well enough to win a championship? Does Jackson Hayes give them good enough minutes? Are they able to go small against a lot of these teams? We're going to find out. Number 6 is Denver. They have the best player in the world. They're struggling right now, 4-9 in their last 13, but part of that's because Jamal Murray hasn't played. Can he even come back? Moses Malone, Coach Malone in Denver has said some not very encouraging things about it. And they need him desperately. As fun as it is to watch Nikola Jokic be amazing every single night and throw up 40-point triple-doubles, it doesn't matter if they don't win. And they aren't winning without Jamal Murray. They need him back because they don't win the title 3 years ago without him. It does not happen. It does not happen. So he's got to come back, and he has to be good. Number 7, the Houston Rockets. They're the 2 seed in the West, but I don't trust them at all. They don't have a tier 1 player, but they're fun because they play incredibly hard. Ime Udoka's ability to get young players to buy in is as good as any other coach in the NBA. He just gets dudes to show up and play hard and go at it every single night, and they know that if they don't, he's going to pull them and sit them down. They're fun. They defend. Amen Thompson is one of the most intriguing players in the NBA. So if you like teams that play hard and play good defense and are athletic, the Houston Rockets are indeed the team for you. Number 8, the Indiana Pacers. Yes, I think the Pacers are better than the New York Knicks. Because like the Knicks, the Pacers can score. And let's just be honest, the teams that are the most fun are the ones that can score. By the way, this is the fun teams tier, not the fringe title teams tier. Sorry, Pacers. You're just not quite there yet. And the Pacers offense is fun. They're fast. They're up and down. They shoot a decent amount of threes. They move the ball really well. They get a lot of easy shots right at the bucket. Like, they are fun to watch. The issue is the defense still isn't there quite yet. I love Tyrese Halliburton. I just don't think he's good enough to be the best player on a championship team. As good of a player as he is, and as great as he is at getting his teammates involved, they need a second guy that's just a little bit better than Halliburton. Okay, so he's great. The Pacers are great. They're fun. I think they're the third best team in the Eastern Conference. I like them more than New York. I also like the Los Angeles Clippers more than the Knicks. They're one of the best surprises of the season. Kawhi Leonard has been nothing short of great when he's played, to be fair. James Harden been really good this year. Okay, I don't know if they have enough because, James Harden, the history of not being good in the playoffs is pretty evident. Kawhi Leonard, his history of getting hurt in the playoffs, can't really ignore that either. They've been a nice surprise, though. Zubac has been really good for the Clippers as well, which has been, pretty impressive. So they've been a lot of fun to watch this year. There's kind of this surprise team. Them and the Rockets are definitely leading that charge. So the Clippers, and then number 10, this is where I have the Knicks, and this is kind of based off last year because we haven't seen Jalen Brunson play here in a minute. But when he plays, and he's right, the Knicks are really good. The issue is they don't have a ton of depth. It's another reason why I like the Pacers more than New York. Okay, but the Knicks just don't have a ton of depth. They play 8 guys. They don't really have a real center. They definitely don't have any real legitimate rim protectors out there. So sure, they have Robinson, but Robinson can't stay healthy, and he's a zero on the offensive end of the floor, which means they're playing Karl-Anthony Towns at center. And I just love the idea of attacking the rim with Karl-Anthony Towns at center. So those are your 10 best teams in the NBA. I really wanted to put Milwaukee in there because, Giannis has just been otherworldly. I mean, he's just been incredible. Jokic is getting all this attention because he's a legitimate MVP candidate. I think I'd vote him for MVP if I had a vote. But Giannis is doing the same thing in Milwaukee with his partner in crime out. Just scoring, getting assists, rebounding the basketball. He's hitting jump shots. He's just taking his game to a whole new level. It's why I really hope the Pacers don't wind up playing the Bucks in the first round, because it's just going to be Giannis going downhill with the basketball for 40 minutes a night. And that is the last thing that I want to have to see for a full playoff series. And as of right now, if the playoffs started today, Pacers would play the Bucks. Pacers still have a 3-game lead over Milwaukee. They have a 4.5-game lead over the Pistons. Pacers really close to clinching that number 4 seed and securing home court advantage. It doesn't seem like the Pistons are going to catch the Bucks. With that being said, there's 5 games left in the season, 4 or 5 for everyone. The Bucks schedule, not the easiest. They got Minnesota. That'll be tough. That game's tonight. That's a big one. And then they play New Orleans, and then they play Detroit twice. So if they're only up by 2 games, the Pistons are still going to have an opportunity to grab that 5th seed from them, which I would much, 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 much prefer to playing the Milwaukee Bucks. But man, that Pistons schedule to close the season, they've got 3 games left. It's the Knicks and then the Bucks twice. And, we'll see how it goes for them. Speaking of seeing how it goes, Zach Pereles saw how the Florida-Houston game went last night. He's going to join me coming up here in about 4.5 minutes or so to talk about Houston collapsing late and losing to the Florida Gators in last night's college basketball national title game. Zach Pereles joins the show here in about 4.5 minutes.
For a new patio, Indy Decorative Concrete is offering free demolition. Got an old deck, cracked concrete? We'll remove it at no cost. Hurry, this offer ends April 30th. Go to indydecorativeconcrete.com for details.
Let's do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys had a nice time last night watching the national title game. Florida beating Houston. Joined now by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports to talk about the game. Zach, how are you, man? What's going on?
I'm great. I am always a little bit feel like it's a little bit bittersweet when the college basketball season ends, but it was an awesome tournament and really an incredible finish. After it was maybe not quite as crazy as we thought it would be the first couple rounds.
Yeah, the game was great. I don't even know really where to start, but yes, I do. Yes, I do. How surprised were you that Walter Clayton Jr. scored 0 points in the first half?
Yeah, obviously 0 was a big surprise. But Houston really, they are so good defensively on those screens that Walter Clayton had just attacked over and over and over again. The Houston big men are so good at moving their feet. And I know that we've talked about them not being the biggest, but the trade-off is that they are super athletic and they have gigantic wingspans. It's like they can move their feet. And so when Walter Clayton loved to get around that first screen and he'd be expecting to step into a three or, be able to attack downhill. But those Houston big men really strung out all of those screens. And you saw I think he took 4 threes in the first half and all of them were several feet behind the line, really contested. So I was surprised, but I was surprised at the 0, but I wasn't surprised that he struggled and it took them a little bit to get him going.
Yeah, the 4 threes that he took in that first half felt like just frustration of I'm not able to get by anybody or get downhill or get, within 30 feet of the bucket without someone being on me. So I'm just going to chuck 30 feet away from the basket just to get a shot up. It was, like you said, just really impressive from Houston and their big guys and their ability to step out and kind of, like you said, extend the screen and then recover back. What changed? Why was Florida able to come back from down 12?
Yeah, I think the big thing is Florida really dug in defensively. And I thought that was a big, we look at the offense all year and how they just go up and down the court and attack the offensive glass. Their defense was really outstanding in the second half. I thought that they had active hands. They forced a bunch of turnovers. The last four Houston possessions were all turnovers. So I thought that they were much better in that aspect. Obviously, it helped that Walter Clayton got going a little bit, but really, I think it started on the defensive end. They did a really good job. Houston obviously rebounds the ball as well as anyone on the offensive end, but Florida really did a solid job on that end. And I think that Todd Golden deserves a lot of credit here. Alex Condon was kind of not super great this game. He had a lot of turnovers. So in the second half, you got a lot of Thomas Houck, and Florida outscored Houston by 13 points with Houck on the court. I thought that was a big stretch there. They made a lot of their run, or at least a significant portion of their run, with Walter Clayton on the bench. So obviously Clayton had a strong close, and I thought that it was just really a good job, though, of Florida showing off its depth and being able to, bring in a guy like Houck who can shoot it, who can, get to the basket. He has very different game than Condon or Chinyelu. So I thought that was a big deal that Todd Golden was able to stick with Halk, with Clayton on the bench, and they were able to make that run.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, talking about Florida beating Houston last night. You can read all Zach's stuff over at cbssports.com, and you can sign up for his newsletter there as well. I'm with you. I thought that the biggest stretch of the game and where it really felt like it turned was that run with Walter Clayton Jr. on the bench, because I don't know how you felt, but I know for me, like, he went to the bench and I was like, they're down by 12. Like, if Houston goes on like a quick little 6-0 run, Florida's going to be in a lot of trouble. But they didn't. Instead, Florida cuts the lead down to 3. Were you? I was. Were you surprised at Todd Golden's willingness to pull Walter Clayton Jr. out with them being down 12?
Yeah, I thought that it really seemed like that was just kind of his normal rest. And especially against Houston, when you have to work so hard for everything, you've got to give him a couple minutes here or there. Especially because I think he kind of needed that reset, considering he had struggled. So I was surprised that Florida's offense kind of got going there. But again, I think it's more a testament to they had a lot of guys step up. Halk only finished with 5 points, but for them to have such a positive differential with him on the court, and his couple of buckets were a really big dunk, and then that really impressive. I have no idea how he made that fast break and won.
Yeah.
They just started to get some stops, and the complexion of the game really changed with Halk in there, because he's a guy who, when Florida comes and sets those high ball screens, they run so much of their offense through the big men after that. Halk, unlike Condon, Halk is a guy who you have to respect his 3-point shooting. So then the pick and roll game got a little bit going as well. So was I surprised that Walter Clayton was kind of not out there for a little bit of that stretch? You could say yes, but really it just showed that they were okay. I thought Denzel Aberdeen gave them some good minutes. Like, it just showed when you can bring guys like that off the bench and not only not have a fall off, but even make a little bit of a run, and then Walter Clayton comes in and starts getting it going. That's why they're national champs.
That's exactly right. The depth of Florida has been evident all season. And you talk about how being able to come in when Condon was struggling. Like, he traveled 3 times, Condon did, in the first half. It seemed like he just felt, especially early, a little overwhelmed by Houston and just the ball pressure that they were able to apply. But Will Richard, like, what a first half from him. Like, he to me, like, everything that you said is so true. Just like the defense from Florida down the stretch, the depth. But they don't win that game if Will Richard doesn't hit 4 threes and score 14 points, literally half of Florida's points in the first half. What'd you think of him and his performance last night?
Yeah, absolutely outstanding. Like, when they needed literally anyone just to keep, within touching distance of Houston, it was Will Richard. And those, you mentioned 14 points. They came on really tough shots. Like, that is a really, really good player. And then in the second half, obviously, we talk about only the 4 points, but he had that huge steal with under a minute left. Just a really, really good player. And I think it's also a testament to Florida's development of these guys, like 0 top 100 recruits. They just had so many guys become really good players. And all year long, obviously Walter Clayton was the guy, but they had 6 different guys lead the team in scoring, in an individual game. And Will Richard was one of them. And you hit the nail right on the head. Like, if you had told me that Walter Clayton didn't score and Florida had all these turnovers in the first half and they were only down 3, they would have taken it every time. And they certainly took it this time en route to becoming the champs.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, talking about Florida's win over Houston last night to become the champions of the college basketball world. Were you surprised at how terribly both teams shot the ball from 3?
Yeah, a little bit. I was actually more surprised that Houston didn't shoot the ball as well, because that was kind of what made Houston different this year, is that they could shoot the ball really well from three. It just was not, Uzan struggled and Emmanuel Sharp struggled. I know he hit the one deep one late, but obviously he is unfortunately going to be most remembered for that late turnover. So I was really more surprised. Houston got a lot of really solid looks and just didn't make them. And Florida, I thought, their offense was really, really out of sync for a long time. So when you look at the quality of shots that they got, I wasn't surprised at what they shot. But yeah, I mean, overall, just like it was really just excellent defense by Houston. And then the issue is they just couldn't, make up for it on the other end. A lot of times they get great 3-point looks out of their normal offense, but they also get a ton of 3-pointers off of offensive rebounds and kicking it back out. And I thought that they didn't really get either one. So that was a surprise to me.
It really was. Like, when I look at Houston and I watch their offense, I think so much of it comes from not only their, like, the ability to make threes, which they didn't really do last night, but also the second chance points, like you said, like against Duke. It felt like every time Houston needed a bucket, it was offensive rebound, kick out for three, and then Cryer would make it because he was really good in that game. Houston had less than 10 second chance points in this game. And like, as great as Clayton Jr. was down the stretch, as good as Will Richard was early, like, Florida's ability to close possessions with rebounds, which doesn't even feel correct to say because Houston had 15 offensive rebounds. I guess their ability to give up offensive rebounds and then get a second stop was, I think, one of the more unsung things that happened for Florida that I was really impressed by. Did you notice that during the game, like Houston grabbing offensive rebounds and still not being able to score?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. You can grab as many offensive rebounds as you want. If you're not scoring off of them, it doesn't really help. And I thought that a really, really good example, and this will probably get lost in sort of all the, meltdown moments. Houston got JoJo Tugler, who's a terrific offensive rebounder, got a offensive rebound late. This was the first of their, 4 turnovers on 4 possessions to end it. He got an offensive rebound, and Kelvin Sampson mentioned this after the game. He has been so good at getting those rebounds and going back up with it, keeping it high, or at least kicking it back out to shooters. And just this one time, he got the offensive rebound, but he brought the ball down, and Florida was able to strip it away. So that was a moment that, when you look back at this game, yeah, Houston got some second chances, but they just couldn't convert. And it's those little moments like that. He does 90% of the play correctly and just makes one little mistake, and credit Florida's active hands and toughness. So yeah, I think that was a big, big deal. The second chance opportunities not lining up to the second chance points was huge. And you have to credit Florida for being disciplined, even when they did give up those offensive rebounds, and obviously a little bit lucky that Houston didn't always make them pay.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, talking about Houston losing to Florida last night in the national title game. Zach, I do want to ask you about next season. How tuned in are you to the transfer portal right now?
Yeah, I feel like I'm relatively tuned in. I do think that it's so funny because I think I saw a baseball analogy to this. It's like the third inning right now of the transfer portal season, which is crazy because there are thousands of kids in it right now. So, it's just, there's so much more to come. We'll see. There have been rumblings about who's going to leave who or whatever, but it's just still so early. It's, it used to be like we'd get these way too early power rankings for, the next year, and it wouldn't, it'd be early, but I didn't think it'd be way too early because you could kind of project who would be coming back. Now it really is way too early. Like, I have no clue what half of these rosters are going to look like.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. And, like On Three and these different places are all putting out these like way too early top 25s. And I was scrolling through them and Arkansas's on there. And I'm like, Arkansas has like 4 players on the roster. Like, what are we doing here? It's just, I find it incredibly silly. With that being said, I am going to ask you, is there a team for next season that like you're really looking forward to watching play?
I think that, and this just came in this morning, I think that I'm really interested in Kentucky in year 2 under Mark Pope. And they just got Jaden Quaintance, who is such an interesting guy. He was only 16 years old as a freshman last year. So, like, this is a very rare, maybe even unheard of guy who is probably going to be a top 10, maybe even top 5 pick as a still very, very young player who was literally too young to go to the NBA. He just transferred in from Arizona State, and that guy can really, really go. And Mark Pope, we saw what their offense can do this year. I think that that's going to be a team that I'm already kind of sketching in, maybe not in pen, but maybe in pencil as a team that I'm going to be excited to watch.
What about Purdue?
To be honest, I don't know enough about them, but
Fair enough.
I know that Matt, I'm ready.
They're going to be interesting. Like they are, I think Purdue is going to be the very early, very trendy Final Four pick. Braden Smith and Kaufman Wren coming back. And, they had this stud freshman who got hurt like their 4th game of the year or whatever it was. And he missed the whole season. He should be back. And so I'm just kind of waiting to see who that really trendy team that everyone really likes is going to be,
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with you that starting point is really, really good. You bring back 2 all Big Ten guys. So, yeah, I would love to see him get kind of a explosive wing scorer, which it kind of felt like without the dominance of Zach Edey, like you just needed one more guy who could really go offensively. But, it's really something that Purdue has gotten to the point where you're almost always writing them in as not only just a tournament team, but a team that can make a run. And just like, that's just such a good job. I always appreciate teams who have staying power, even as the landscape has kind of changed. And it seems like staying is not really a word that we use so much, but staying power, when you have a foundation like the one Matt Painter has established, that's really impressive.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBSSports.com. You can read all of his stuff there. You can also check out his newsletter. You can sign up for it over there as well. Talking about, just college basketball now. And Zach, I was talking earlier in the show about like the future of college hoops, because this is, I think, the most talented that it's ever been. And part of that is because of the transfer portal and how, like the better mid-major players are moving up, and like the Power 5 players or the Power Conference players who weren't quite good enough to play in the Big Ten or the SEC, like they're all transferring down. And so everyone is kind of where they're supposed to be. With that being said, I feel like there's like another level that this could go to in terms of the popularity of the sport, because it still feels like a March only sport. Do you kind of feel the same way about it?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the more frustrating things, and I agree with you 100%. I think it was a few years ago. I think it was the Chet Holmgren year, and I think Gonzaga played Duke, and it was Chet versus Paolo, and those were the 2 guys, who were projected to go 1-2 in the NBA draft. And I just remember immediately after the game, the talking point was, how does this impact their NBA stock? And, let's look at the latest mock draft. No, we should be talking about the game. And I think that you're 100% right in terms of there should be another level for college basketball to get to so that it matters for 5 months. There are a few things that I'd love to see. I know that there's I think it's called Players Era Tournament is expanding. I guess it's going to go to 32 teams, and it's going to be like a little mini March Madness, little November Madness. I'm interested to see what that does. And I'd just love to see maybe like a little bit more scheduling awareness from conferences. Like I feel like I remember very like I have a very visceral, burned into my brain memory of the week after the Super Bowl. The college basketball schedule was just like not great. And there's no reason that we can't figure out a way to get really good games on the schedule. Like there just should be more creativity. What if the first weekend after the Super Bowl, there was some sort of fun scheduling quirk, not like, maybe something along like an SEC, ACC challenge, but maybe something like a little bit different that can just add something so that you can immediately go, oh, these games matter. And, the first step might be people thinking it matters in February, and then maybe we can continue to add. But yeah, I think that it's just so tough. Like the best tournaments early in the season, everybody's focused on the NFL and college football. And it's just, you get the Maui Invitational, which is fun because there's basketball on during the day and there are really good teams. But I really do think that they can just do a better job scheduling, creating more of these really good events to capitalize on, a Wednesday in November when there is no NFL, or also capitalizing on the first weekend after the NFL ends. So I agree with you that the sport has a lot of room to grow, but you're right. The talent is awesome. NIL has really, really helped there. And you're seeing guys, I think last night was the first national championship where a single freshman didn't play since 1989.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. That's crazy. I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, talking about the future of college basketball and just the popularity of it. I think everything you said is so true. Like the overlapping with the NFL and college football, like just kind of gets it off to a slow start. And then your point on Paulo and Chet playing against each other a couple years ago, and how like for the best players in college basketball, it is very much viewed as like they're here for a year and then they're gone. And I was thinking about women's college hoops the other day because, UConn crushed South Carolina in their national title game on Sunday. And I think part of why Caitlin Clark was like such a big deal at Iowa is because people knew exactly where she was going to be and people knew how good she was. And so like we saw her junior year be awesome. It's like, oh wait, we're going to get to see her do this again next year at Iowa. And like people getting, a full year's, or I guess 3 years worth of experiencing her and then getting to see her in a final season, I think really played into, the almost 19 million people who watched her play in that national title game a couple years ago. And I think that in order for college basketball to kind of reach that next level of popularity, I don't think that this will ever happen. But if the NBA altered the rule where guys had to stay for 2 years instead of just one, I think that's really kind of what has to happen, because then instead of, oh, Paulo and Chet, like after this year, they're going to go be the number 1 and 2 picks. It's, oh, wait, we're going to get these guys next year. And those guys are going to be making so much money. You would think that they wouldn't transfer like a lot of players do now. What do you kind of think of that take and aspect of it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a reasonable point. I think, like you mentioned, it's going to be impossible for it to actually happen. I think that one and done is so ingrained. I do think that maybe the biggest thing, and this is another thing that'll never happen, I really wish that we could just view players under the lens of how good they are as college players, which for some reason we have so much trouble doing, because everyone just wants to project how good they're going to be in the NBA. And I think the perfect example last year, the last couple years even, is Zach Edey being like one of the best college basketball players of all time. And all you hear about is how different the NBA game is and how he's going to struggle there, or if he's going to be able to, be a good NBA player. can we just sit and appreciate a guy who's doing things that like put him on the level of the all-time great basketball players, like probably a top 10 college basketball player of all time. And all anybody wants to talk about is, can it translate to the NBA? And they want to talk about his shortcomings. So I think a big divergence, which is troubling, is in the WNBA and women's college basketball, you're not having constant conversations about, oh, how is this player going to be in the WNBA? They're just appreciating how good of a college player these players are. In men's college basketball, it's always, are they going to be able to do it in the NBA? Is this an NBA prospect? Like, if we could just shift our frame of reference to, how about you pay attention to Zach Edey having 35 and 10 every night? Like, then we would take a huge step forward, I think, in the popularity of men's college basketball. And I do think, but it's also a fine line to toe because, for example, the one and done rule, when you look at some of the most, when you look at some of the best and most exciting college basketball players in the past 10 years or so, the one and done rule was super helpful for them. Like, Zion Williamson was a one and done, but he was the third best player in that Duke recruiting class. He needed that 1 year to show, yeah, like my physicality, my dunks, my everything can translate. And then a guy like Trae Young, he also needed that 1 year. He shows out on the brightest stage. And I remember ESPN was having Trae Young tracker, like he's, every moment he steps on the court. So it is really a fine line. And I just think it all comes back to, why can't we just appreciate the guys as college basketball players for a season before we start talking about the NBA?
I completely agree. Zach, thanks for your time, man. As always, you were great.
Thanks for having me. It was a fun one.
You got it. That is Zach Pereles. You can check him out on Twitter at Zach_Pereles. He writes a very good newsletter for CBS Sports. Make sure you go and check that out as well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, more thoughts on Florida beating Houston to be your national champions.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, you can also listen via that Indy Sports Ticket app wherever you download your apps. You can also listen on X, or I guess watch on X or Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith if you want to watch there. And if you want even more from me, you can check out my YouTube channel, My Take Is. Now, Florida beat Houston last night for three very simple reasons. Okay, let's start with the first one. Will Richard goes crazy in the first half. He scores 14 of Florida's 28 points. It's 4 threes. The only player on Florida's entire roster in that first half to make a 3-point shot. He was the only one. Will Richard. So he comes in, and it was huge because Houston did an excellent job of keeping Walter Clayton Jr. in check. If you had told me before the game that Walter Clayton Jr. would score 0 points in the first half, I'd be like, yeah, Houston was probably up by like at least 10 going into the break. But no. Will Richard steps in. He keeps the game close. You know, Florida only down by 3 going into the break because of Will Richard and his ability to hit some tough shots in that first half to keep Florida in the game, while Walter Clayton Jr. got off to a very, very slow start. He only took 4 shots in the first half. All 4 of them were like 30 feet from the bucket and contested. Like, they were super tough shots. To Houston's credit, they did an excellent job of making life tough on him in that first half. Okay, they weren't able to do it in the second, though. More on that here in a minute. When you listen to people talk about this game today, they're going to talk about Will Richard, and they're going to talk about Walter Clayton Jr. in that second half. But the most important thing that Florida did to win that game last night was how tough they were on the interior, especially defensively. Houston grabbed 15 offensive rebounds. That's a lot. That is a lot of offensive rebounds to give up. But Florida held them to less than 10 second chance points. Houston's offense is made up of 2 things: second chance points and 3-point shooting. When you hold Houston to less than 10 second chance points, you immediately have a good chance to win the game. Like, you are giving yourself a chance to win. And then you throw in the fact that Florida held Houston to 6 of 25 shooting from 3. That is Houston's offense. 3-point shots and offensive rebounds that lead to putbacks. And Florida didn't let them have either one of those things. So many of Houston's buckets came off of LJ Cryer hitting a tough shot that he had to create himself. And he wasn't even very efficient. He was 6 of 18 from the floor. And so the 2 main ways that Houston puts the ball in the bucket, Florida just didn't allow Houston to do. That is ultimately why they won the game. Also because Walter Clayton Jr. got it going there in the second half, scored all 11 of his points in that half. It was very impressive. And the biggest stretch in that second half didn't even involve Walter Clayton Jr. They're down, by 12, around like the 15-minute mark. They pull Walter Clayton Jr. out of the game. They sit him down for his scheduled rest time. Props to Todd Golden for not freaking out and leaving him in there because they needed offense in those moments. They're down by 12. Walter Clayton Jr. goes to the bench, and Florida goes on a run. And they cut this 12-point lead down to 3. Walter Clayton Jr. comes back in. I believe at the time he had 2 points. He had made 2 free throws just before being subbed out. And, he comes back in. They're down by 3. And it's like, all right, like this game, it's not over. But it feels like it's over because that Walter Clayton Jr. is not going to finish the game with 2 points. And he, Todd Golden, again, doing a really good job of taking the ball out of his hands and getting him the ball while he's already moving. And so, he'd come off those screens, that horn set, and he'd curl to the rim, and he got 2-and-1s off of that. He saw the ball go through the bucket, and all of a sudden he hits a big three late to tie the game. And you knew that he was going to make the three because he's Walter Clayton Jr., and that's what this guy does. All he does is hit big shots. If that's what he does, that's who he is. And it was really impressive to see Florida and the resiliency to just continue to battle with Houston the entire way through that game. Just so you know, if you are listening, our 1430 signal's down and engineering is working on it. So if you are listening, thank you for tuning in via that Indy Sports Ticket app or on the YouTube page, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe, or if you're watching on Twitter or X as well, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. Hopefully our engineering staff will have the 1430 signal back up and running soon. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, there's been a lot of discussion around the future of college basketball, what it's going to look like. Are we entering the golden age? The answer is no. I'll tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
You know what's better than a limited time deal? An unlimited time deal. That's why the Wendy's $5 biggie bag with a junior bacon cheeseburger, 4-piece nugs, junior hot and crispy fries, and small soft drink is available all the time. Because the best time for fresh, never frozen beef and Applewood smoked bacon is all the time. Duh. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot. For the best deal of all time, gotta be Wendy's.
Unlimited time does not mean forever. U.S. price and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Alaska, Hawaii, and California via third-party delivery. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Ready to order?
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with a Capital One Saver card. So let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything. The Capital One Saver card is at table 27, and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu.
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
It may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X, the Everything app. You can check me out there, _ Jonathan Smith. You can follow the station there as well at Ticket 1430. Maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And if that's not enough, there's another way for you to listen to me. You can head over to YouTube, search for My Take Is. It's another thing I do on the side. You can check that out as well. Speaking of checking things out, takes are flying all over the place about the future of college basketball and how we're in such a great time for college basketball. 15 million people tuned in for the Final Four, and it's great. It's awesome. It's lovely. And there are certain things I've seen about the future of college basketball that I wholeheartedly agree with. Like the idea that the future of college basketball from a talent standpoint is as bright as it has ever been. And it has been. We didn't have dudes like Walter Clayton Jr. 7 years ago. Okay, the Final Four, I mean, just the amount of talent and shooting was just overwhelming. And the athleticism, the talent in the sport is super high. And the transfer portal is part of that. It is. Because you've got these mid-major guys transferring up, guys like Donovan Dent going from New Mexico to Xavier. Darian DeFries is bringing in two guys that were in mid-majors last year to come up and play at Indiana. Lance Jones going from Southern Illinois to Purdue. It has made the sport better because the best players are playing on the best teams in the biggest conferences. That is helping the sport. But what's also helping the sport is you have guys that can't quite hack it at that power conference level transferring down. For example, Brandon Newman at Purdue transfers down to Western Kentucky because he was a decent Big Ten player, but he went down there and he was awesome for Western Kentucky in that mid-major conference. It is making the sport better. March is awesome. It's still wildly entertaining. It is as entertaining now as it was 20 years ago. It is, because the March Madness and the one and done and the threat of upsets and the constant pressure of every single possession is so, so special. Now, despite March being incredibly special, and despite the sport being as talented as it has ever been, it is going to continue to solely be a March sport. The interest in college basketball early in the season is not there. And it will continue to not be there for a couple of reasons. One, it starts during football season. It's problematic. Okay? It is, because feast week during Thanksgiving is great, but when you look at the ratings, people are watching the NFL games on Thanksgiving, not the college basketball games. Okay, if there's a college basketball game on, a Thursday night, we're watching Thursday Night Football. Sorry, that's just the reality of it. Oh, well, what about Saturdays? Yeah, I'm going to watch college football over college basketball. That is how the majority of people spend their times during those fall months. So because they're directly competing with college football, it's tough for their season to get off to a good start. Now, the Maui Invitational is fun, and those early season tournaments, they're good. The issue is, once again, they happen during football season. So if games aren't on at 2:00 in the afternoon, if they're on at night, I'm watching the football games, and that is how the majority of people spend their times, based off of how the games rate during that time of the year compared to the NFL and college football. And, there's a version of a solution for that. Start the season later, figure out a way, to play games on Fridays instead of Saturdays. There's ways around that issue. There's one issue, though, that becomes significantly tougher to avoid. And that is the lack of familiarity within the sport. While the transfer portal allows for college basketball to be as interesting as ever because all the talent ends up on the right teams in terms of like the best teams and all those things, it also creates unfamiliarity between the teams and the fan base. Okay, when players move around, it's just harder to be invested in your team. This is the one thing that the WNBA and women's college basketball have figured out. Their best players don't bounce around. Part of what made the Caitlin Clark saga as amazing as it was is she didn't move around. Like, she was at Iowa all 4 years. She didn't go from Iowa to Iowa State to Florida and then finished her career up at St. John's. Like, that is not what happened. She was there all 4 years. And there was never even a thought of her leaving Iowa. Juju Watkins and Paige Buchers, part of why, the national championship game for the women's side had 8.5 million viewers is because, like, people are very familiar with Paige Buchers. Okay, she was at UConn her entire career, and she was never going to leave. Juju Watkins had a major following at USC because she was there her entire career, and she was never going to leave. I think that she'll be back next season as well. And that just builds camaraderie with the fan base, because I do think that fans enjoy watching, let's take Purdue fans. Purdue fans, I'm sure you have loved over the last 3 years seeing Braden Smith develop from young freshman point guard that made some mistakes to now the second best point guard in all of college basketball behind Walter Clayton Jr. of Florida. Okay, and it builds a real rapport with the fan base. And Purdue fans, you are excited to see Fletcher Lawyer and Trey Kaufman-Wren and Braden Smith come back for their senior seasons. You are. But if you're an Indiana fan, like, how excited can you really be for this team next year when you don't know who any of the players are? When you've seen them play like twice, if that. Tell me, Indiana fans, this transfer from Davidson, how many times have you seen him play? Probably zero. That's the reality of a sport right now. There's just a lack of familiarity between teams and their fan bases. And that doesn't really begin to develop until later in the year. This constant rotation of players lessens the attraction to the sport because the familiarity just isn't there. While these, former mid-major players are going to continue to come up out of nowhere, and their stories are going to continue to be good and entertaining, like, let's just be really honest. Walter Clayton Jr., the player of the NCAA tournament, you didn't know who he was before this season, unless you're a Florida fan. He's been a great story, though. He has been. But people didn't pick up on him until halfway through the year. He didn't. Or the fans didn't. That's just the reality of it. Part of why Caitlin Clark in Iowa were interesting from the jump is because everyone knew who she was and what she was capable of, because they'd seen her do it at Iowa for the last 3 years. If Zion Williamson had gone back to Duke for a second season like he wanted to, the interest would have been there from the jump, because everyone knew who Zion Williamson was and what he was capable of and everything that he had done at Duke the year prior. And people would have been tuned in to Zion Williamson and Duke from day one. College basketball will not reach its golden age until they can figure out a way to get these high-level freshmen to stay at the same school for 2 years at a minimum. The intrigue in college basketball would be significantly higher at the start of the season next year if Cooper Flagg went back to Duke, and if Knipple went back to Duke, and if VJ Edgecombe went back to Baylor. And if Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper both went back to Rutgers, the intrigue would be higher, because it's like, oh wow, like, I saw these guys as freshmen last year played really well and they're super talented. They're coming back. Like, let's go. Can't wait to watch those guys play in the Bahamas, where Indiana will probably tamper with people. That's a good thing, Indiana fans. I'm not making fun of you in a bad way. That's a good thing. Familiarity is important. And once, or if the NCAA can figure out a way to get these high-level freshmen to come back for a second year, it does two things. Not only does it increase familiarity between the fan base and the team, but I just said this is the most talented we've seen college basketball. If you get these like high-level freshmen to stay for 2 years, then the talent only increases and the familiarity of the sport increases. Because right now, it's going to take you like 10 games for Indiana this next season to figure out who's good and who isn't. Because no one knows who the players are on their favorite teams. And from a national, like who's good, who isn't standpoint, it's going to take a couple months to figure out who's good and who's not. Like preseason polls in these way too early college basketball top 25s have never been dumber. Because there are teams out there right now that have like 0 players on their roster. Okay? And this roster turnover every single year lessens the attraction to the sport because people just aren't familiar. The only thing when it comes to college basketball the fans are familiar with are coaches, logos, and the jerseys. And the jerseys change not all the time, but there's a lot of them. No one is familiar with the players. And the golden age of college basketball will come when fans are able to be more familiar with the players. And that only happens when players stop jumping around every offseason and these stud freshmen like Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple and the 2 guys at Rutgers and VJ Edgecombe and the rest of these guys stick around for more than 1 year. That is the very simple reality of it. Basketball season is not over, though. It's just full-time NBA stuff going on now, which is awesome. Love, love, love the NBA. Pacers, they're hosting the Wizards tonight as the Pacers are still trying to become or firmly grasp onto that number 4 seed in the Eastern Conference so they can have home court advantage through the first round of the playoffs. Need to beat the Wizards tonight. They should. Pacers are going to play hard because they want that 4th seed, and the Wizards are trying to lose. They're tanking. They want to capture the flag. They've been doing it all year. They've won 17 games. That's not very good. So the Pacers should win. Should be a lot of fun to watch the game, though. The Pacers hung 163 points on the Wizards the last time that they played. Are they going to score 163 again? I don't know. But I do expect for them to win and to win pretty big. That's going to do it here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune in. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. The Dan Dockett Show is coming your way next. Nice show loaded up for him today. We got Dane Fife at 12:30, and then the great Seth Greenberg at 1 to talk about everything that transpired last night in that Houston versus Florida game. Stick around. You don't want to miss it. Thank you again for checking out my show. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow from 10 to noon. In the meantime, if you want more from me, go check out My Take Is over on YouTube. I will talk to you tomorrow starting at 10 a.m.